All right, here it is, church. Here's what we're praying about. Here's what we're discerning. Here's what we're trying to figure out. What would God have us do? We want to be about embracing life with Jesus for the renewal of Southwest Nova. Now, we don't know all the ins and outs. We don't know where that's going to lead us or where that's going to take us. We don't have the specifics nailed down. But what we are praying about as a board and a staff and now as a church is, I believe, when people embrace life with Jesus, he can't help but bring the renewal. So many times we try to find the renewal and assume we'll find Jesus on the way. But I really think if we flip that around and we embrace, we abide, we hold on to Jesus, when Jesus is near, he can't help but start bringing renewal into our lives and into our families' lives. And so that's kind of the vision we're praying about. And while we don't have it all figured out, I can't imagine a better place to start when we're talking about renewal than renewing our families. I can't think of a better place to pray for God to move across Southwest Nova than in our families. Any families here could use some prayer? Anybody at all? You're a little stiffer than I expected. I thought the hands would fly up all over the room. Here's what I know to be true. You're all part of a family. There's nobody here that's not part of a family. You might not have your own family unit, but you are part of a family. Last time I checked, nobody spontaneously combust into presence. You are part of a family, whether you like your family or not. Everybody has a family. The second thing I know to be true is there are no perfect families. You all can rest easy. You all can stop filtering your photos on Facebook. You all can stop going through the 50 photos the photographer picked or took of you while you were apple picking. You don't have to find the perfect one to convince us that you have a great family. You're all released. Here's what I know to be true. Your husband did not want to be there. I don't care how much you photoshopped his face. I know what he's thinking. Second thing I know to be true, I don't care how good you got your kids to behave for that photo. The rest of the time, you're just trying to hold it together. Can everyone just take a sigh and breathe? There's no perfect families. They don't exist. You can just be you, and you can admit we don't have it together. The third thing I know about families is that while you might admit there are no perfect families, if I ask you to list the places you're not perfect, you're going to clam up. People can admit they're not perfect. They just don't want to discuss where they're not perfect. And so what happens is families have things going on, and they don't know who to talk to about the things going on in their home. And the parents' number one fear, here it is, folks, the parents' number one fear when you're going through a challenging season is that little Johnny is going to go to school and tell the teacher all that's going on at home. Can I get an amen? Little Johnny's going to go to Sunday school, and when someone asks for a prayer request, little Johnny's going to put his hand up and say, "Can you pray for my mommy and my daddy? They're always fighting." And that's our fear. Shh. How many times have you said, keep family business at home? Keep family business, the business of the family, shh. Because while we know we're not perfect, we're kind of afraid to have people get in on our stuff. We're kind of afraid to be judged about it. We kind of assume our stuff is worse than somebody else's stuff. And sometimes it is. But we're afraid to be judged. We're afraid to have people look down on us. And so we kind of lock it down. It's amazing how few families in Southwest Nova really do want to talk about their stuff. Well, here's what I want to do. I want to try something I've never tried before. I want to try group counseling. Anybody feeling adventurous? A few people? How about some group therapy? Am I ready? She's real tight. Here's what I want to do. I want to do together what most of you won't do alone. I want to do together what most of you will never book an appointment with me to do as a family. Now, you might say, "You're not a counselor." You're right. But here's else what I know. The social services in Yarmouth and Southwest Nova are backed up to a deplorable degree. That is not an indictment on the people who are serving in social services. Those people are saints. But the work far exceeds the workers. If you wanted to, as a family right now, in a hurry, get help, you would just have a hard time. I've been your pastor for 8.5 years. Most of you know I've been praying for an increase of counselors in Southwest Nova. We have more stuff going on than we have the services to take care of it. And so people land in my office, land in Dave's office, like, here's the deal. I want to talk about this thing. We always ask, does your spouse want to come with you? And they always say, no. No, they don't. Like 1% of people want to actually do it together. Most don't. So here's what I want to do. I want to talk to all of you without talking to any one of you. Does that make sense? I want to talk to all of you this morning, but not talk to any one of you. If any one of you thinks he's talking about me and my story, rest assured I'm not. I'm just talking about all of you and all of your stories. Being in a family and having family is hard. It just is. And so for the next few weeks, I want to speak into that and hopefully help a little bit together what I could not possibly do one at a time. I want to hit some things. I want to talk about communication at a family level. I want to talk about forgiveness at a family level. I want to hit anxiety at a family level. Not all today, but over the next 3-4 weeks, I want to hit those things. But today, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, I'm going to ease in real gently. This is a real gentle entry into some family counseling, some pastoring families together. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I want to go there and read it for you. You've probably heard this. I've preached from it a number of times at this church. It gets read at funerals constantly. So here we go. Here's his thesis. If he's writing his doctorate, here's his thesis. For everything, there's a season and a time for every matter under heaven. That's his thesis statement. For everything, there's a season and a time for every matter. Now he'll defend it. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. If you've never read Ecclesiastes, you can go back to chapter 1 and come through, and what you will find is Ecclesiastes is lumped together in our wisdom literature. You will find books of the Bible that the writer is spouting wisdom, truths or truisms over and over again, but what you don't find is a lot of advice for how to walk it out. You don't find a lot of, if this is true, therefore do this. It's a lot of just matter of fact. It's a lot of things where this is what I've learned, this is what wisdom says, and I can't find a better part of Scripture that's just sheer wisdom and truth. Isn't that passage true for all of you? Like, not one person got to hear that passage and say, nah, it's not for me. I mean, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be nice if life was always laughing and dancing? Wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't it be awesome if every day was sunshine and roses? Maybe nobody wants sunshine and roses. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't it be fantastic if every lunch was ribeye steak? And a little lobster for supper? Like, wouldn't that just be like, oh man, that is fantastic? But you and I know that's not true. You and I know there is no life that is all laughter, that does not include tears. You and I both know, we all know, life has times of dancing and celebrating and times of mourning, loss, and deep grief. You know there are times for ribeye steak. Thank you, Lord. And then you know there's chicken nuggets and french fries for supper. You know this, do you not? Is this not a natural part of life that, I would love for it to always be this way? Psalm 23, he leads me beside still waters. Some of you would love some still waters this afternoon, but you find yourself in the valley of the shadow of death. He says there's a time to talk, and some of you are like, yes. But there's a time to be silent. And some of you who are always silent, there's a time to open your mouth and speak. Life is diverse, seasons are diverse, and this is just a truism of life. So my counselor question for you, this is me practicing being a counselor. Good counselors don't tell you things, they ask you things. So here's my first counselor question. What time is it for you and your family? That's what you pay me the big bucks for, that question. That's the question. What time is it for you and your family? I think this is a profound question to sit down and talk about as a family unit, at our dinner table, wherever you do your best talking, and don't just take the first answer at face value. Soak on it. If you remember my one prayer sermon, I said part of the deals with the Lord sometimes is the longer you sit with something, he pulls back the layers of the onion. And you might answer, it's such and such a time, only to find out if you sat with it, he might have pulled back 2 more layers to help you see something you could not see. And so I ask you again, what time is it for you and your family? I get asked a lot of questions about what people should do. There's a lot of meetings I have with people saying, should I do fill in the blank? I get asked all the time from people who have the opportunity to take a new job. Should I take this job or should I keep the job that I have? And I say, I don't know. Should I take this promotion and get paid more money? I don't know. Should we have our first child or should we have another child? I don't know. Should I step into a new ministry? I don't know. Should I step out of ministry? Heavens no. We're short on volunteers. Nobody can ever step out, not once, not ever. Should I give my child a cell phone? I don't know. Should I let my child on social media? I don't know. Should I give my adult child more money? That sounded like a child. How many children does that child have? Should you give your adult child money? I don't know. Should my aging parents move in with us? I don't know. But they should move in with me. Some of you have asked me the question, should I add this thing to my plate or should I clear my plate? I don't know. See, here's the deal. The questions are all good, and the questions do have an answer. They just don't have an answer in isolation. The questions are not the questions unless you zoom out and say, what time is it? What season are we in as a family? And if you can't answer what season or what time it is for you and your family, I would caution you to answer any of these questions too rigidly. So let me ask you again, what time is it for you and your family? Let me tease out a few things that might help shape how you answer that question this week as a family unit. As you read Ecclesiastes chapter 3, you find wisdom in the words and you find wisdom behind the words. When you read your Bible, you're always doing 2 things. What am I reading and what is it saying? There's always 2 things going on. There's wisdom in what the author writes, and there's wisdom behind what the author writes. Because he doesn't explicitly say it, but he's really saying the times are always changing. You know this. It's not 2019 anymore, church. I don't know about you. Just let me have a moment for therapizing myself in front of you. Sometimes when I'm stressed out and frustrated by 2024, I go to a happier place. And I'm not a needy person. I just go to 2019. I don't know why, but I go to 2019 as my happy place. 2019, this church was just on a tear. Everything was up and to the right. We booked the Mariners Center. We packed it out. Everything was going awesome. On December the 20th, I think it was, maybe the 21st, like 2,200 people gathered in Jesus' name at the Mariners Center. And 90 days later, we couldn't put 5 of you in a room. And I'll tell you right now, the world is not the same place it was as it was in 2019. Times change, folks. Times change. The things that you could do before might have to change. When I went into ministry, I was single. Last time I checked, I'm not single. I did 2 years of ministry single. Then we did 5 years of ministry, or I think it's 4 or 5 years, without kids. Ministry looked very distinctly different before kids than with kids. Then ministry with babies looks very different than ministries with kids 7 and up. Ministry looks different when Julia says we should do foster care. Ugh. Ministry looks different when we add campuses. Ministry looks different every constant season, and I don't know what you find. Every time I think I perfect a season, the season changes. Life and family dynamics are always changing, and if families are to be healthy, I highly suggest you start being adaptable. I don't know if you have a family vision or values. I don't know if you have a family crest somewhere in your family lineage. But I would just suggest to you that each and every family would be well served by stating today one of our values is adaptability. The world is changing fast, and it does not care what you think. Things change at breakneck speed. The second thing under the fact that this is changing and behind the words of Ecclesiastes, and this might be a game changer for a few people in this room, new times require leaving behind old times. This might change some of your worlds. New times require leaving behind old times. Brett Laidlaw is getting married in 5 days. Is he here? He's here somewhere. Brett Laidlaw is getting married in 5 days. I cannot wait to go to somewhere between Halifax and Truro. He won't seem to tell me where. Just somewhere between those two places. And I get to do his wedding this week. And so I've been giving him pep talks, and you might not know this about me. I'm a wild encourager. You might not know this about me. But I regularly find Brett, and I give him these encouraging words. Please don't screw this up. Just every so often, I'll just text him, please don't screw this up. On their wedding invitation, RSVP, I wrote in the comment section, Brett, please don't screw this up. Boy, I got a lot quieter. Okay, fine, I'll give you a better one. The second thing I always say to him, this will be fine, more encouraging. Brett, she's too good for you. Constantly. I'm a wild encourager. And I go to Brett constantly, like, Brett, remember, she's too good for you. Please don't screw this up. That's my little pre-wedding pep talk. That's for fun and foolishness. The third thing I say to him, I'm bone dry serious. You better grieve being single before you get married. I went to his office this past week and stood there in front of again. Brett, you better grieve single life before you get married. I would say in my 20 years of doing poor marriage counseling, I would say 75% of the time, it's people trying to be one while trying to be single. Most dynamics that I've encountered are that people are trying to be one, but didn't fully leave behind the single life when they stepped into marriage. And now they're trying to be one as individuals, and it's not jiving. Personal preferences and dynamics and rhythms and budgets are still 1v1 instead of there's only one. And this happens so often that people forget to leave the past in the past and step into the new and be new when you get there. The second most common thing I bump into in couples counseling that I don't like to do, so please don't call me, this is it right here, right now, is when kids show up. I don't know if you've noticed this, but before you have kids, even when you're married, it's loads of freedom and flexibility. And then kids show up, and they change everything. There's nap schedules, there's food, there's this, there's that, there's all these kinds of things. And what happens is, at least in our household, is that Julia was with a child, I ran around having fun doing ministry and playing ball 6 nights a week. And for some reason, she looked at me and said, I resent you. I mean, I looked at her and said, I gave you a child, didn't I? That's a joke. Settle down. Settle down. See, you can't do parenting if only one's parenting. Julie and I couldn't raise our kids if I was on a ball field 5 or 6 nights a week or doing church stuff or doing this or that. I love playing ball, but I'm a dad now. It's got to adjust. I had a profound moment on my journey in Yarmouth a couple of years ago. I was just dabbling in ball. It's just law ball here. It's only worth dabbling in. And I was on the ball field. I got a text from my wife because she was at a ball field with one of our kids. And the text said, one of our kids is struggling hitting. And in that moment, the whole world right-sized. What does it matter what I do on a ball field if my kid is on a ball field somewhere else having a hard time? My ball playing days were over in a moment. Old things have to go for, will I ever play ball again? Probably. I'll be the old guy with his arm thrown out when I'm 60. But new seasons require new rhythms. You have to leave the old behind sometimes and step into the new. The third most common thing that people don't want to step into is when incomes change and budgets don't follow. So many people try to run their life the same even when their income and costs are variable. Yes, you may have been able to afford something in 2019 or 2018, but we're not there anymore. Well, we used to always do these things. Yeah, those were the olden days. You used to. You got to adjust. Well, I used to do everything for my kid. Well, you might not be able to anymore. New days require new decisions and new rhythms. Third thing, and we're still just kind of warming up. Third thing is new seasons require new boundaries. I want to say this with a ton of compassion and let some of you off the hook. You need to accept your boundaries, that you're not God. Some of you need to hear me loud and clear. You're not God. I can start with the moms if you want. You have limits and boundaries and things placed on you that are different than before you had kids. There might have been a season where you could run and gun and be everything and do everything and be everywhere and help everybody, but now it's changed and you're actually grieving it and not sure why it's not feeling right because there's new seasons that require new boundaries for the task at hand. You're not God. Dads, you may have run around being superhero and 6 feet tall and bulletproof when you're 25, and now you're 45, 55. You're not bulletproof. You're not God. One heart issue can change your whole dynamics. You're not God. Part of walking this out is seasons, is realizing to accept your limits. The second thing you need to do is teach your limits. It is a gift to teach people around you your limits. You can't be everywhere and do everything. And if I can be really personal, because some of you this is going to really hurt, start teaching your limits with your kids. You can't do everything. You can't give them everything. And here's the good news. That is good news. It is good news to not give your kids everything and do everything for them and go everywhere. It's not a great idea to do and on everything. Do you want to do this and do this and do this and do this? A better gift you can give to your kids is or. Do you want to do this or this? If you raise kids thinking they can do everything and be everywhere, that bubble's going to burst in adulthood, especially when they turn 23 and don't have your income. You need to teach them limits. It's okay for kids to come home from school and say, little Johnny in my class, their family's off on a Caribbean cruise. What are we doing for our vacation? And that's when you look it down to little Johnny and say, little Johnny, I hope they have a great time in the Caribbean. But little Johnny, for our vacation, we're going canoeing in Lake Milo. And little Johnny looks at you and says, Dad, that's not fair. And you put your hand on little Johnny's shoulder and say, I know. Well, that'll hurt their feelings. I know. If they're playing too many things and you feel split in half, it's okay to say, or, do you want to do this, or do you want to do this? It's okay. It actually helps them process and have the ability to make decisions. Most young adults now are suffering from anxiety because of the inability to make healthy decisions. They've lost that executive function. They're suffering from indecision. They think they can do everything. They can't. It's an impossibility. So you're gifting your kids to teach them limits. Third point there, and then we'll start preaching. Third point, hold to your limits. Parents, do you hear me? You can do it. If you put a limit down and your kid freaks out, that's okay. Hold to your limit. The best word you can give to your kid is no. And have them freak out. That's not fair. Say, I know, I'm your parent, not your friend. It's a gift. Now, some of you are kind of stiff. Let me turn it up a notch. Hold to your limits with your adult children. There are people sometimes who don't know how to love and parent adult children well. Because once a kid, always your kid. And it's okay to have healthy, respectable boundaries, even into the adult years. That is a gift you're giving. Adult children, it's okay to have boundaries with your parents as you get older. That's a gift. These are boundaries as the season changes. Oh my goodness, it's 5 to 12. I'm having fun. Are you guys? Yeah. All right, let me preach for a second. The problem is, this never changes. There's no advice that can really be given that's functionally helpful in the moment because the moments are always changing. Every time you learn one season, it changes. You learn a rhythm, it changes. So the best news I can give to you is that Jesus never changes. The best news I can give to you is not just to mess with you, but to say seasons are always changing. Jesus is constant. Jesus said, everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock, and then the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on the house. But it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like the foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house. And it fell, and there was a great fall of it. The question I would ask you as you're actually discussing the time is your family rooted and anchored in Jesus? Now, don't say yes too fast. It might take some time to feel it out, to look at your calendar, to look at your bank account, to look at your priorities, and you might actually find out, oh my goodness, I think we're rooted in comfort. Oh, I think we're rooted in our career or my income. Some of you might actually be rooted in this church and not Jesus. That would be very unhelpful. And so if you ponder for a moment, are we actually rooted in Jesus as the seasons change? Are we anchored in the rock? Because as the wind blows and the seasons change, he's going to hold. As decisions come your way about what you should or maybe shouldn't do you actually seek his counsel on any of it? Here's the thing, he might have an opinion. So what happens is, one family deciding if a kid should have a cell phone, that's not going to help you no matter how many blogs you read if Jesus says yes or no. Jesus might know something about your child that you don't know. Jesus might have wisdom about what little Susie can handle that you don't know. Some of you might say, we're going on vacation and we can afford it. It's in the budget. That means your economy is your foundation. Maybe if you pray about it, Jesus might know something about your year that you don't know. You might have saved up for that vacation, you've budgeted for it, the money's in the bank, you're about to book it, and you actually ask Jesus' opinion. He says, hold off. Man, I got the money for it. I know, I said, hold off. Yeah, but the Smiths had a great time when they were down there. I saw their photos. Yeah, hold off. What if he knows something about your year that you don't know? What if he knows something is coming that you just can't see right now? And what if it's not, we're not going to this big trip, we're going to buy, no, just hold tight. If he's the anchor and he's the foundation, maybe we should give him the final word on some of these things. I don't talk about this a lot up front. I leak it from time to time. That's on purpose. When Julia said we should do foster care, I said no. And then I said no for a bunch of years. And I changed my mind, obviously. We've done this. I changed my mind not because she was persistent. That's true, but that's not why. Because I asked Jesus about it, and he said yes. I told him I don't want to. I told him I already have this to worry about. He didn't seem to care. I told him it's enough of a job to love the kids we gave life to. I don't want to love other people's kids. He again said, I don't care. Jesus said, you're doing this in this next season. Now, here's the thing. I have disliked the journey of foster care more than I've disliked almost any other journey I've been on. And I have learned how to love more from this journey than any other journey I've been on. Do you think Jesus knew something about that? I have seen my sin before God more clearly by watching a foster child have a temper tantrum in front of me. When God's like, that's how you look to me. Our kids have learned more about space and love and kindness in the face of unpredictable chaos than anything else we've ever done. I have had my heart expanded for the hurt in our community when the hurt in our community came in our home. I feel one thing about the community when it stays out in the community. I feel very different when it's in my home. It's almost like Jesus knew something. I almost said Julia, which also is true. It's almost like Jesus knew something about that. Part of the deal of walking with Jesus and building on his rock is he will show you all kinds of discipleship opportunities for your family in the season that you're in. I pray to get out of seasons. I pray for seasons to change fast. If the season won't change, I'll run faster through it. And Jesus keeps whispering to me, would you stop trying to run through this and would you start finding my fingerprints in the season that you're in? There's blessings and lessons and provisions to be found only in this season. And if you jump out of it, you're not going to learn what you need to learn. I've been driving my kid to junior high, which blows my mind. But what a privilege to turn our car into a discipleship bubble for 11 minutes a morning. I harass her all the way there. I bug her all the way there. I ask her what I can pray for. I tell her if a boy looks at her, all the way there. But sometimes she disciples me. She'll reach over and grab my hand. This week, I did not want to preach this. The sermon would not come together. And on Thursday's drive, I asked her to pray for me as I preached. That's family discipleship, going through a season, going through a time and knowing the time. There are gifts and blessings to be found in the season that you're in. And my plea with you would to be embrace the time with Jesus. Find the blessings that he has for you before you're out of the season, only to realize he had things for you that you were on the verge of missing.